Hey guys, Henry here, and today we're going to be talking about Survivor Season 40, Winners at War, Episode 14, the finale, recapping and breaking down the episode and the winner of this epic Survivor season. So we start off the episode with Jeff Probst, and he's giving us an intro, and he's hosting this finale from his garage. Given the current lockdown situation, there obviously can't be a reunion show, but they've sent Jeff everything he needs: microphones, cameras, and he's got a nice, neat little setup of a little tribal council thing, and he's hosting the show from there. The final three players are all on video chat, awaiting Jeff to announce the winner, and this episode is absolutely jam-packed, so there's only very little time to recap the season and have those reflections from other players because there's just so much left to go. First off, we start with the Battle Back Challenge, the return challenge for one person on the edge of extinction to rejoin the 5 active survivors and be in the final 6. Everyone has stuck it out this far waiting for this moment, except of course Queen Sandra. There are a few big physical elements, and then finally a ball maze at the end. Natalie, having hoarded all those fire tokens, has 3 advantages. Yul, Wendell, and Pavati each have 1. Unfortunately for Natalie, she ends up wasting a bunch of time at the very first section. She can't even get out of the very first thing that she's in, and people just start catching up to her, and it makes it seem like, she's lost all this ground. She's basically wasted this advantage. Luckily, she does manage to make up some ground due to her additional advantages, but she also suffers another setback. Towards the end, Wendell is the first person that gets to the table maze, and he's the first person to land the first ball of 2. Natalie manages to catch up, and she's the second person to land the first ball, with Tyson just behind Natalie. And in the end, it's Natalie who sinks that second ball and wins her way back into the game, just edging out Wendell. Natalie, honestly, the first one voted out, she's now back in the game in the final 6. And then Jeff goes on and asks Kim, Tyson, Amber, Rob, Pavati, Ethan about their experience playing Survivor, supposedly for the final time, and they have these really emotional goodbyes. It's pretty clear that these guys won't be coming back. This is the final time they'll be playing Survivor, and they reminisce about how Survivor has changed all of their lives and how much Survivor means to them. And I'm not gonna lie, this section brought me to tears. And this is not the only section of the episode that is tear-jerking. There are so many more. Back at camp, Natalie rejoins the tribe, and she immediately tries to make waves, telling everyone about how the jury perceives Tony as pulling all the strings and calling all the shots, and that if Tony is there at the end, he's definitely gonna win. While this is really bad for Tony because he doesn't want everyone thinking he's such a big threat, he needs to still make it to the end. He knows he's played a good game, so he tries to make everyone realize that, look, Natalie can just say whatever she wants. There's no one here to confirm what she's saying, to confirm what the jury supposedly think. But at the same time, it definitely looks like what Natalie is saying is making Sarah's wheels turn a little bit. If there's any truth to the jury all thinking that, it's Tony being the head of the snake and Sarah's just along for the ride. Although Sarah is extremely confident in the game she's played, and that's why she's not afraid of going up against Tony at the end. She starts to question whether or not the jury will actually see it that way. At the first immunity challenge of this episode, Ben gets a solid lead with Natalie and Tony just behind, while Michelle is lagging well behind. But she makes a massive comeback and takes the lead at the puzzle. Everyone tries to copy her, but at the end she finishes first and wins immunity for a second straight time. An absolutely huge win for Michelle. So she's at the bottom still, so this was a vital immunity for her to win. And she knows now that she needs to work with Natalie and keep winning immunities to stay alive in this game. Back at camp, only Tony really suspects Natalie has an idol. Sarah and Ben don't think that she does. But honestly, they should be listening to Tony because we know Natalie has an idol. And Tony has logically made the connection that the last time Edge of Extinction was in the show, people came back with an idol. And they were able to use that idol to prolong their life a little bit longer in the game. So Tony talks to Ben about potentially splitting the votes on Natalie and Denise, just in case Natalie has an idol. But Ben feels quite close to Denise, and it looks like he isn't really down for that plan, preferring just to all vote for Natalie and get her out of the game ASAP because he doesn't think she's got an idol. Meanwhile, Natalie and Michelle, they talk and they immediately form an alliance. Michelle being at the bottom and having no one to turn to, and of course Natalie having no allegiance, having just come from the edge. Michelle now, with the immunity she's won at the challenge, and Natalie with her idol, they hold quite a lot of power in the upcoming tribal council, and they really need to make a dent in this alliance. Michelle reports back to Tony and Ben. She spins them some complete lies. She doesn't tell them about the immunity idol, and she just tells them that Natalie is just going to chuck her vote on Tony and that Michelle and Natalie aren't really working together. Tony tries to convince Sarah to split the votes to save him and Ben having to use their idols tonight in case Natalie whips out an idol, but Sarah is completely confident that Natalie doesn't have an idol, and at this point it really looks like Sarah is at risk of getting voted out. If it so happens that Natalie does have an idol and Ben and Tony play their idols, the only vulnerable people are Sarah and Denise, and Sarah might end up accidentally going home. And on top of all this, Sarah isn't really worried that Natalie could win, which I think is a big mistake. She's been on extinction while not getting to play Survivor in the sense of voting people out. She was still doing challenges and roughing it out to get back in the game, and most importantly, she was building relationships with people on the edge, and those people are going to be on the jury. And at this point, I definitely think she will be getting votes at the end. There's no surefire way of saying if she'll win or not, but there's definitely people on the edge that will definitely vote for her. Now we go to Tribal Council, and there's a lot of talk about the differences between the perception of women and men in the game of Survivor, and how playing aggressively and lying and cheating is perceived differently between the genders. On one hand, guys are looked at as being studs and making shrewd and powerful moves, whereas women are looked at as being bitchy or deceiving. And I think all this talk really did a good job to reframe Tony and Sarah's relationship. It's not just Tony running around doing everything and Sarah is just a number for him. Him and Sarah are working together to make these moves. Yes, Tony seems like he's the face of it, but Sarah is at the back. She's working her magic, talking to people, convincing them to do one thing while they're off doing another thing. She's really working in tandem with Tony, and it's not like their relationship is one-sided in any way. And I think that she did a really good job making her case to the jury to not just look on the surface. And even if Tony is there at the end with her, to really think hard and consider the game that Sarah's played, and not to just discount her because of an unconscious bias. I think this speech was an absolutely brilliant move by Sarah. It was emotional, it was real, and now it feels like she doesn't even need to get rid of Tony. And she might have actually changed the minds of the jury. She could sit there with Tony and have this speech in their minds when they're making their decision. So we get to the votes. Natalie plays her immunity idol, shocking Ben and Sarah. So Tony and Ben are forced to go ahead and play their immunity idols to make sure that they're safe. The votes come out, 4 on Natalie and 2 on Ben. They all don't count, and they have to revote. And now the only people that they can revote for are Sarah or Denise. And Jeff explains that if there's a tie, they can't go to rocks because there's no one to draw rocks. So there'll be a fire-making challenge if it's a tie. The revote ends up eliminating Denise 4-0, and she joins the jury. Denise going home was basically Tony's backup plan, so he's definitely not too broken up about it. But as he was forced to play his idol, he's now vulnerable at the next tribal. And at this point, I'm not sure why Natalie and Michelle didn't split the votes and make Sarah and Denise go to fire and put Sarah at risk and sort of break up that Cops R Us partnership. But I guess Natalie and Sarah had a stronger relationship and they felt like they could turn Sarah against Tony later on. And when they get back from tribal, Tony immediately goes out idol hunting again through the night. He doesn't manage to find anything, and by the time the sun is up, everyone else is out looking as well. And in the end, Natalie is the one that finds it. And man, she is sitting pretty at this point, having come in with an idol and now finding an idol. So we go to the immunity challenge, and at the end of the challenge, it's neck and neck between Tony and Ben. and Tony ends up winning immunity. And back at camp, Natalie's talking to Michelle about trying to get Sarah on side and getting rid of Ben. It's funny because as soon as Natalie's in the game, she's just out there trying to make moves, trying to make things happen, looking for idols. It really makes Michelle look like she's just riding Natalie's coattails now. So it just puts Michelle's game in a bit of perspective that maybe she could have been trying a bit harder. But at the same time, I understand Michelle was in a very difficult position, always being at the very bottom. So Tony and Sarah, they devise a plan to get Tony to go up into his spy nest and for Sarah to bring Natalie to the water well for a chat. So they do this, and while they're chatting, Natalie shows Sarah the idol that she's found and tries to convince Sarah to vote for Ben. And so Tony's up there in his spy nest and he sees everything. So now him and Sarah, they know that Natalie's got another idol. So they discuss their plan of attack, trying to lull Natalie into thinking Tony and Ben will vote for her and so that she should play her idol for herself, while the reality is that the three of them vote out Michelle. But while Natalie's talking to Michelle, Michelle just does not see Ben, Sarah, and Tony cracking. She's seen them operate, they've been a tight unit, and she correctly suspects that they might be voting for her. So she tries to convince Natalie to play the idol for her. But at this point, it's sort of 50-50. They just need to play it on one of them and hope that's where the vote's going. And in a weird twist, Ben offers himself as a sacrificial lamb to Sarah and gives her permission to vote him out and to use it on her resume, differentiating herself from Tony's moves. And it's clear in this moment that these two have a very real connection because they're both tearing up, they're both in tears. Sarah has talked about how she's found it very hard deceiving people, and she felt like playing the game of Survivor and being good at it, it made her a bad person. And Ben didn't want her to feel guilty about making a decision between Ben or Michelle, and that's why he gave her permission, that if she chose to vote out Ben, there was no hard feelings, he wouldn't take it personally, and that he was okay with her decision no matter what. So now we get to the tribal council, and Ben talks about, coming out of this season with friends and having a different perspective on the game. But when he said that, I honestly found it a bit ironic because of the way he was beefing so hard with Jeremy earlier this season. But at the end, Ben ends up getting voted out, with Sarah dealing the swing vote and Tony absolutely oblivious. We now go to the final immunity challenge, where they've got these balls on this track and they need to keep feeding the ball in, and when the ball drops out, they need to grab that ball and put it back in the top. And as time goes on, more balls are added, and of course it gets more difficult and they have to do things faster and faster. Tony is the first one to go, and then Sarah, and Michelle and Natalie are the final two, getting up to 5 balls in motion. Natalie ends up winning the final immunity and secures her spot in the final 3, and she gets to pick someone to sit with her while the other 2 will need to go to make fire to get into the final 3. It's unbelievable that Natalie, the first one to get voted out, she's now going to be at the final tribal council and has the power to make the final move. So at tribal council, Natalie decides to bring Michelle along with her, and she puts Sarah and Tony to go head to head at making fire for the final spot. This fire making challenge was legitimately so tense and so close, an absolute nail biter. In the end, Tony does win it out, and it was an extremely bittersweet ending to Cops R Us. Tony having to take out his partner Sarah to get to the final 3. The emotion pouring out of Tony, Sarah, and Ben in this episode really shows you the bond that these guys had for each other and why their alliance actually went so far and why they never turned on each other. Tony breaking down after he'd just eliminated Sarah makes me love his game even more this season. He had his true alliance with Sarah as Cops R Us, and he never betrayed that, and he was willing to sacrifice himself for her. He was willing to give her his idol, and in the end they just had to make fire against each other, and the person that did it was going to go through. And honestly, the game he's played, I'm just rooting for Tony. If Sarah had won, I'd be rooting for Sarah. I think both of them did a masterful job being on top of this group and just calling all the shots. At the final tribal council, you've got Natalie now, who was first to get voted out, was stuck on extinction. She roughed it out there. She won plenty of advantages. She earned so many fire tokens. She then wins her way back into the game. She plays her immunity idol. She finds another immunity idol and then wins the final immunity. And I don't think anyone else could have come back from extinction and win the entire thing. It was either going to be her or Tyson that could potentially do it, but it's amazing to see Natalie come this far. Then we've got Michelle, who's played on the outs the entire game, who had to find cracks and get in with the other people at the bottom, who I think played a really good social game and that a lot of people really got along with, and she won really clutch immunity challenges to stay alive. But at the same time, she had no real control over her destiny. She didn't know what was going on. Sure, she did a good job to adapt and stay afloat, but it sort of means that she got dragged to the end. And finally, you have Tony, who had a very strong alliance with Sarah and Ben, and who won 4 immunity challenges. He orchestrated some great blindsides, especially getting Sophie out at that juncture of the game. He found an immunity idol. He had a spy shack. No one ever voted for him. He even overcame the extortion for fire tokens. He made fire to make it into the final 3. And he didn't play like a madman. He changed up his game. He made sure he didn't have a target on his back. He played with a sound strategy, keeping in meat shields to protect him. And he just had an overall dominating performance. And the winner of Survivor Season 40, Winners at War, is none other than Tony. Everyone voted for him except for 4 people: Jeremy, Tyson, Parvati, and Ethan. And those guys voted for Natalie, and Michelle didn't receive any votes. Everyone respected the game that Tony played, although Jeremy was clearly a little bit salty as he tossed his vote to his good mate Natalie. I really think Tony is the clear winner of this season. As Boston Rob put it, Natalie almost played a perfect game. She needed to get Tony out before the jury could vote for him. Maybe if Natalie was sitting with Tony and Sarah, they might have split some votes. Maybe if Natalie was sitting with Ben and Denise, she could have won. But with Tony there, I didn't see a way for Natalie to win because Tony's performance was just dominating. This season was wildly entertaining. So many strong and smart players. It was awesome to see them all go head to head. There were some great twists, great blindsides, and a lot of emotional highs and lows with the family visits, the struggles on extinction, and of course this emotional final episode with Ben falling on his sword for Sarah, and the end of Cops Are Us. I definitely did not pick Tony to win this whole thing from the beginning. He was definitely a wild card. I would have thought he would be out early in the game. He's done a phenomenal job, and he deserves to be crowned the king of Survivor, now being the second person after Sandra to have 2 wins under their belt. Thank you guys so much for watching. Go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. What did you guys think of this season of Survivor? I think it's got to be one of the best seasons yet. Obviously, without Survivor, I won't be making Survivor videos, but I will still be putting videos out on other movies and TV series, so make sure you head over to my channel to check it out. As always, thank you guys again, and I'll catch you guys next time.